The first thing he heard was the telephone. It was barely light over Uxbridge, the air thick with the damp chill of an English summer morning, when the duty officer stepped into the underground operations room and handed the receiver to Air Vice-Marshal Keith Park. The clock on the wall marked just after 4 o'clock. On the giant plotting table before him, the channel lay calm in colored chalk. Above it, the fate of Britain hung on thin green arcs of paint and small wooden markers. A controller's voice came through, clipped, urgent. Chain home radar stations along the south coast were picking up something unusual, more echoes than usual, at longer range, perhaps test flights, perhaps something worse. Park listened, eyes flicking to the empty skies on the plot, then gave the only answer he could. Keep tracking. Call me the moment they form up. He put the phone down slowly. Outside that bunker, Britain was alone in Europe. France had fallen, the Low Countries were occupied, and across the Channel, the Luftwaffe was massing. The man responsible for defending London and southeast England had just been told the storm might be about to break. No one in that room could yet know this would become remembered as the Battle of Britain, a battle where the key weapons would be radar-masked radio sets and young men barely out of their teens strapped into Hurricanes and Spitfires. They only knew that if the Luftwaffe broke fighter command, there would be nothing to stop German troops from attempting a cross-channel invasion. Operation Sea Lion, Hitler's plan for landing on British shores, depended on winning the skies. The question confronting Park and his superior, Air Chief Marshal Sir Hugh Dowding, was brutally simple. Could a small force of British fighters and a fragile, untested system keep an entire invasion at bay? If you love World War II history, strategy, and the stories of the young pilots who fought against overwhelming odds, please hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible stories of courage and decision that shaped our world. On the surface, Keith Park did not look like the sort of man cast for a heroic last stand. A New Zealander by birth, he had fought as an artillery officer and then as a pilot in the First World War before transferring into the Royal Air Force. Those experiences had left him cautious but decisive, a commander who preferred measured responses to dramatic gestures. Known for his calm demeanor and sharp eye for the tactical picture, he worried constantly about one thing above all: wasting lives and aircraft in futile, large-scale clashes that looked impressive on paper but exhausted fighter command's limited reserves. However, Park also knew that his responsibility, 11 Group, the sector covering London and southeast England, would bear the brunt of any assault. Its squadrons were closest to the Channel and the likely path of German raids. In mid-1940, that meant his pilots would be flying multiple sorties a day, scrambling at short notice, climbing hard in overworked fighters to intercept incoming formations. He had to balance aggression with conservation. Young men who might be laughing over tea at dawn could be dead by noon. Yet if he held back too much, bombers would reach London, ports, and airfields unopposed. The tension between those two imperatives haunted his every decision. Above Park stood Sir Hugh Dowding, the Commander-in-Chief of RAF Fighter Command. Unlike more flamboyant air leaders, Dowding was reserved, almost dour, with a dry manner that concealed a mind obsessed with systems and efficiency. He was not simply thinking about individual battles. He was thinking about how to fight an entire air campaign without burning out his forces. Known for his insistence on careful resource management and his belief in fighters over strategic bombers, he had already clashed with colleagues who dreamed of offensive air operations over Germany. His priority, however, was clear: keep Britain in the war. Despite his reputation as a somewhat aloof bureaucrat, Dowding was deeply protective of his pilots. He had overseen the creation of the structure that bore his name, the Dowding System, a revolutionary network linking radar stations, telephone lines, filter rooms, and group and sector operations centers. This system allowed him to see, in near real time, the movements of enemy formations, and to feed that information down to controllers like Park, who could then launch Spitfire and Hurricane squadrons at just the right moment. Unlike others who still saw air warfare in romantic terms, Dowding thought in terms of information flow, reaction times, and statistical trends. On the other side of the Channel, Luftwaffe Commander Hermann Göring presented a stark contrast. Bombastic, ambitious, and hungry for quick results, he promised Adolf Hitler that his air fleets could smash the RAF, break British morale, and open the way for Operation Sea Lion. Under him, Experienced commanders such as General Feldmarschal Albert Kesselring and General Feldmarschal Hugo Spurl prepared their units for what many German officers believed would be the final necessary blow against a cornered enemy. Yet even within the Luftwaffe, there were doubts. Some argued that their aircraft and tactics, optimized for close support of ground forces in blitzkrieg campaigns, were not ideally suited to a sustained air superiority battle over hostile territory. The reason this confrontation became so decisive lay in the speed and scale of events in 1940. In just a few months, Nazi Germany had overrun Poland, Denmark, Norway, the Low Countries, and France. British forces had been pushed off the continent at Dunkirk, leaving much heavy equipment behind. There was no major Allied army left in Western Europe. Thus, for Hitler, Britain looked isolated and vulnerable. His high command believed that with the Royal Air Force neutralized, the Royal Navy could be kept at bay by air attacks, mines, and U-boats while troops crossed the Channel. This led to a crucial strategic question inside the German leadership. Was an amphibious invasion truly necessary, or could air and sea pressure alone force Britain to negotiate? Grand Admiral Erich Raeder, head of the Kriegsmarine, urged caution. He pointed out the Royal Navy's strength and the risks of a cross-channel operation if the Luftwaffe failed to secure full air superiority. Göring, by contrast, was confident that his air fleets could knock out the RAF in a matter of weeks. Hitler, weighing these perspectives, agreed that command of the air was the first condition. Only once fighter command was broken would Operation Sea Lion move from plan to reality. As a result, the Luftwaffe entered the summer of 1940 with a broad mission: destroy the RAF, support potential amphibious operations by keeping British warships out of the Channel, and strike at ports and infrastructure to damage the British economy and morale. Their aircraft inventory reflected earlier campaign needs. The Messerschmitt Bf 109 was a superb single-engine fighter but had limited endurance over southern England. The twin-engine Bf 110, meant as a long-range escort fighter, proved vulnerable in daylight combat against nimble Hurricanes and Spitfires. Bombers such as the Heinkel He-111, Dornier Do-17, and Junkers Ju-88 could carry respectable loads, but were not heavily armed enough to survive without strong fighter escort. On the British side, the situation looked precarious but not hopeless. Fighter Command had around 600 to 700 frontline fighters, mainly Hawker Hurricanes and Supermarine Spitfires, organized into groups and sectors under the Dowding system. While some older fighters such as the Bolts and Paul Defiant struggled, the Hurricane and Spitfire were modern, monoplane designs with enclosed cockpits, retractable landing gear, and powerful Rolls-Royce Merlin engines. The Hurricane, rugged and stable, formed the bulk of the force, while the sleeker Spitfire, with its elliptical wings and higher top speed, quickly gained a reputation for performance and handling. The true British advantage, however, was not just in aircraft performance. It was in how information was gathered and used. Along the coast, tall radar masts of the chain-home system scanned the skies, detecting incoming formations at long range and reporting their range, bearing, and approximate altitude. This data flowed into filter rooms where it was combined with reports from coast watchers and the Royal Observer Corps. From there, it went to Fighter Command headquarters at Bentley Priory and then to group and sector operations rooms. Because of this chain, Dowding and Park could see German raids forming over France and the Channel long before any bomber crossed the coast. While some in government, and even within the RAF, had been skeptical of radar before the war, the first weeks of German attacks on shipping and coastal targets proved its worth. The Dowding system allowed Fighter Command to commit just enough squadrons to each raid, preserving precious aircraft and pilots. Instead of keeping large standing patrols that would burn fuel and exhaust crews, British fighters could remain on readiness on the ground, scrambling only when radar and observers confirmed an inbound attack. This efficient use of limited resources became crucial as the tempo of operations increased. Within this framework, individual pilots experienced the battle in a brutally personal way. A young Spitfire pilot might be roused at dawn, wolf down a quick breakfast at dispersal huts near the runway, and then sit in his cockpit waiting for the scramble bell. One recalled being called at 4 in the morning, flying his first scramble at 7 or 8, returning to refuel and rearm, eating sandwiches brought to the dispersal point, and then going up again and again. By evening, after 3 or 4 sorties and the loss of several squadron mates, fatigue could become so severe that one pilot later admitted he briefly fell asleep in the cockpit, waking only when he realized he was upside down and diving hard toward the ground. These human realities shaped Dowding and Park's decisions about how hard to push their squadrons. While some politicians and senior officers demanded more aggressive tactics, including sending large, big wings of multiple squadrons into massive aerial battles, Dowding worried that such formations took too long to assemble and risked heavy losses. Park, responsible for 11 groups' immediate defense of London and the southeast, favored smaller, more flexible responses guided precisely by radar and operations room controllers. Thus, even within fighter command, there was tension over how best to use its limited strength. The stakes were more than tactical. They touched on morale, survival, and the future shape of the RAF. As the summer of 1940 progressed, the Luftwaffe's campaign unfolded in distinct phases. Initially, German attacks focused on channel shipping, convoys, and ports. The idea was to disrupt British supplies and draw the RAF into battle over the sea, where downed pilots were harder to recover. Because of these raids, Fighter Command learned painful lessons about tactics and coordination. Some German missions succeeded in sinking ships and damaging port facilities, but they did not break British will, and they exposed Luftwaffe crews to increasingly effective interception guided by radar. This phase led to intensified German efforts against the radar stations and airfields. Commanders concluded that weakening the radar eyes and the fighter nests would blind and cripple the RAF. Attacks were made against several chain home stations, including sites such as Dover, Rye, Pevensey, Canterbury, and Ventnor. For brief periods, some stations were damaged. Yet the radar network proved surprisingly resilient. Masts could be repaired, and backup systems existed. German intelligence underestimated both the technical robustness of the system and its central role in the Dowding system. As a result, they did not sustain a focused, long-term campaign against radar, giving Fighter Command breathing space to recover and adapt. At the same time, German bombers increasingly targeted fighter airfields in southern England, attempting to destroy aircraft on the ground and crater runways. This put enormous pressure on Park's 11 Group. Airfields such as Biggin Hill, Kimley, and others came under repeated attack. Ground crews worked feverishly to repair damage, fill craters, and keep fighters flying. Because of these strikes, the RAF had to rotate squadrons north and west to rest and reinforce, while bringing in fresh units from other groups. The margin between maintaining operational strength and collapse narrowed. Yet because the Dowding system gave early warning, it was rare for large numbers of fighters to be caught parked and unprepared. Controllers tried to get aircraft airborne or disperse them before bombs fell. Even when runways were damaged, alternative fields and grass strips could sometimes be used. The interplay between German bombing accuracy, British repair capability, and the tempo of operations became a nightly calculation in operations rooms. Every morning, Dowding and Park studied reports. How many aircraft lost? How many pilots killed or wounded? How many replacements available? Each day survived without catastrophic loss was another day that Operation Sea Lion remained merely a plan rather than a reality. The strategic turning point in the campaign came from a combination of British resilience and German miscalculation. On the night of 24 to 25 August 1940, German bombers accidentally dropped bombs on central London during a raid aimed primarily at industrial or dock targets. The damage and casualties, while limited compared with what would come later, enraged public opinion. Winston Churchill's government decided to retaliate by sending a small RAF bomber force to attack Berlin. Militarily, the raid did little damage. Politically and psychologically, it was significant. Hitler, infuriated by the attack on the German capital, ordered the Luftwaffe to shift its focus toward bombing British cities, especially London, in what became known as the Blitz. This led to one of the most consequential decisions in the entire Battle of Britain. While Göring and other Luftwaffe leaders had previously targeted airfields and radar, they now allocated increasing resources to large-scale raids on London and other urban centers. The idea was to break British morale, cause chaos, and pressure the government into negotiation. As a result, the daily pressure on 11 Group's fighter airfields eased somewhat, giving Park and Dowding a crucial reprieve. Fighter Command, though battered, remained intact. The German shift from systematically targeting the RAF's infrastructure to focusing on cities allowed the British defenses to recover just when they were nearing a critical point. While some German officers later questioned this change of emphasis, the decision had been influenced by both emotion and misreading of British vulnerability. The Luftwaffe believed that terror bombing could force a quick collapse, as it had seemingly done in other campaigns. British society, however, proved more resilient than expected. Even under nightly bombing, Londoners adapted, seeking shelter in underground stations and continuing work by day. Churchill's rhetoric, celebrating their finest hour, framed the struggle as one of survival and defiance, making capitulation politically and culturally unthinkable. As a result, what was meant to break British morale often hardened it instead. Throughout these changes in German tactics, the daily reality for RAF pilots remained intense. Consider a day in early September 1940 for a squadron in 11 Group. At dawn, pilots gathered in dispersal, their aircraft lined up nearby. A controller's voice over the radio might instruct them to stand by as radar picks up possible raids forming over France. At 9 o'clock, the scramble order comes. Merlin engines roar to life, fighters hurtle down the runway. And minutes later, they are climbing over the countryside, guided by ground controllers toward an incoming formation. From the operations room perspective, colored counters representing enemy aircraft move across the plotting table, while squadron markers, often identified by their numbers and sector codes, pivot to intercept lines. The Dowding system, with its layered structure of groups and sectors, translates radar blips and observer reports into vector headings and altitude instructions. Because of this integration, a single controller can direct 2 or 3 squadrons to converge on a bomber stream at just the right point, with Hurricanes engaging bombers and Spitfires taking on escorts. The battle that follows in the sky is chaotic and terrifying, but it is not random. It is the execution of a carefully constructed air defense network. At the micro level, each combat is a swirl of individual decisions. A Hurricane pilot might spot a formation of Heinkel He-111s, their black crosses stark against the clouds, and choose which bomber to attack first. He knows that closing in from behind exposes him to the tail gunner's fire, but offers a better chance to bring down the aircraft. A Spitfire pilot might find himself dueling with a Bf-109 at high altitude. Their aircraft matched in performance, the outcome determined by who spots the other first, who manages energy and position more skillfully, and who resists the urge to break off at the wrong moment. Human factors constantly intruded. Fatigue blurred reactions. Grief for lost comrades weighed on survivors. Some pilots became aces, shooting down multiple enemy aircraft in a short span. Others died on their first or second sortie. There were near misses, planes limping home with riddled wings, pilots bailing out over land or sea, rescued by ground crews or patrol boats. There were also tragedies, aircraft colliding in midair, pilots mistaking friends for foes, and civilian casualties when battles drifted over towns. The Battle of Britain was not a clean, abstract duel of machines. It was a series of violent, intimate struggles where a moment's hesitation or a lucky break could mean life or death. As August turned to September, the scale of the raids grew. On what would later be known as Battle of Britain Day, September 15, 1940, the Luftwaffe launched some of its largest attacks against London. Radar stations detected the build-up early in the day. At around 10:30, chain home stations began reporting large formations crossing the channel. In the operations room at Bentley Priory, Dowding staff watched as the map filled with enemy markers. Controllers at 11 Group and other groups began ordering squadrons into the air. Hurricanes and Spitfires from multiple sectors scrambled, climbing to intercept inbound raids before they reached the capital. Between about 11 o'clock and 11:20, more than 100 British fighters, Hurricanes and Spitfires, closed with the first wave of German bombers and fighters. Further engagements followed in the early afternoon. Pilots later recalled the sky over London and the southeast filled with contrails, smoke trails, and parachutes. One famous fighter ace, Douglas Bader, recorded in his logbook that he had led a wing of squadrons patrolling over London, intercepting enemy formations south of the Thames and claiming multiple enemy aircraft destroyed. His entries from those days capture both the intensity of the fighting and the abrupt shifts from success to danger. one moment destroying an enemy bomber, the next spinning off a comrade's slipstream and dropping out of the fight. The macro implications of that day were profound. When the Luftwaffe failed to inflict decisive damage on fighter command or force its squadrons from the skies over London, it signaled that the RAF remained a formidable opponent. British intelligence and observers noted the scale of German losses and the inability of the enemy to sustain a dominant presence over the target area. For Hitler and his advisors, this failure complicated calculations about Operation Sea Lion. Without clear air superiority, the prospect of sending invasion barges across a narrow but treacherous channel under the guns of the Royal Navy became far less attractive. Because the Luftwaffe had to fulfill multiple roles, protect bombers, attack airfields, shield invasion preparations, and try to cripple British industry, it was stretched across competing tasks. Its aircraft were not invulnerable, and its crews were accumulating fatigue and loss as much as the RAF pilots were. Unlike the British, however, German aircrews fighting over England risked capture if shot down. As losses mounted, replacing experienced bomber and fighter crews became difficult. This attrition, combined with the failure to decisively neutralize the RAF, gradually eroded German confidence that the air campaign could deliver the quick, clean result Hitler desired. On the British side, the victory in the Battle of Britain rested not only on the courage of pilots, but on the entire defensive ecosystem. The Dowding system ensured that radar, observers, controllers, and fighters worked as an integrated whole. Chain-home radar stations provided long-range detection, but without the reporting and control structure, their data would have been far less useful. Group and sector headquarters, such as those run by Park, turned information into action. Ground crews kept aircraft flying, repairing damage, refueling, and rearming under pressure. The Royal Observer Corps filled gaps in coverage and tracked enemy aircraft visually once they crossed the coast. Technological advantages also played a critical role. The Spitfire's agility and speed made it a match for the Bf-109, while the Hurricane's stability and armament made it a highly effective bomber killer. Radio communications allowed controllers to vector squadrons precisely and allowed flight leaders to coordinate attacks and disengagements in the midst of combat. British aircraft production, though under immense strain, managed to replace losses sufficiently to keep squadron numbers at fighting strength. While the margin was often narrow, it was enough. As autumn deepened, German high command faced stark choices. The Luftwaffe had failed to destroy fighter command or gain lasting air superiority. Operation Sea Lion, always dependent on command of the air, became increasingly unrealistic. Naval leaders worried that any invasion fleet of barges and ships would be slaughtered by the Royal Navy if deprived of constant, overwhelming air cover. Hitler, already looking eastward toward his long-intended campaign against the Soviet Union, began to view the invasion of Britain as too risky relative to other priorities. As a result, Sea Lion was postponed and effectively shelved. The war against Britain would continue, but now as a long-range bombing and naval campaign rather than a direct assault on its shores. The consequences of this shift were enormous. By surviving the Battle of Britain, Britain remained in the war as an unsurrendered base from which future operations could be launched. It kept the Atlantic lifeline open, provided a platform for the later buildup of U.S. forces, and served as a constant reminder that Nazi Germany could be resisted and held. Strategically, the failure of the Luftwaffe over southern England marked the first major defeat of Hitler's forces in World War II. It forced a change in German grand strategy, pushing the regime toward the disastrous decision to invade the Soviet Union while Britain remained unconquered in the West. For the individuals who fought in the skies that summer and autumn, the victory came at a high price. Hundreds of RAF pilots were killed or wounded, and many who survived carried physical and psychological scars. The official acknowledgement of the few, immortalized by Churchill's words about the debt owed by the many to the few, captured public gratitude but could not fully express the personal cost. Pilots remembered lost friends, near-death experiences, and the intense strain of flying multiple sorties a day. One recalled that by the evening raid, after already flying 3 or 4 times and losing several pilots, the fatigue and grief made the final scramble the hardest of all. Yet despite those losses, fighter command emerged intact. Dowding's insistence on conserving strength, Park's tactical judgment in managing 11 Group, the technological edge provided by chain-home radar and the Dowding system, and the courage and resilience of pilots and ground crews together created a defense that Nazi Germany could not break. The Battle of Britain was not a flawless performance. There were disagreements, missteps, and improvisations, but it was effective where it mattered most. The Luftwaffe never gained the control of the skies that Operation Sea Lion required. In retrospect, the battle stands as a classic example of how technology, organization, leadership, and human courage intersect. Because Britain invested early in radar and integrated air defense, it could make each fighter count. Because commanders like Dowding and Park resisted pressure to squander their forces, they could endure a prolonged campaign. Because pilots and crews continued to fly, repair, and fight under relentless strain, they turned those advantages into actual defensive power. The Battle of Britain forced Hitler to change course, abandon immediate invasion, and fight a longer, more complex war than he desired. That change reshaped the entire trajectory of World War II. Which part of this story of Britain's stand in the skies surprised you the most? The technology behind the victory, the strategic miscalculations of the Luftwaffe, or the human endurance of the few? Drop a comment below with your thoughts. And if this changed how you see the Battle of Britain, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share so more people can discover the hidden layers behind this pivotal moment in history.